segment, the front page, the Transport Authority is reminding the public that no official fare increase has been approved at this time. In a statement issued on Tuesday, the authority noted reports that some public passenger vehicle PPV operators have raised their fares and are overcharging commuters across the island. Operators engaging in this unauthorized practice are being strongly urged to cease immediately. The authority also held a meeting with the PPV operators on Tuesday in an effort to address and resolve the matter. For more, we're being joined by the Minister of Transport, Daryl, and the Managing Director for the Transport Authority, Ralston Smith. Good morning to both of you.
Morning,
Morning, Tana.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Nationwide this morning. Ralston, if you could, to outline the complaints that you've been getting from passengers, commuters on the road.
Well, the authority is in receipt of complaint from commuters that, in particular, taxi operators have been pushing up their fares. We understand in some instances that the taxi operators have been charging a little bit extra for, especially for turn-off. And in the KMTR, the Hackney carriage operators operate along certain routes. And as you know, Hackney carriage is not supposed to be providing route taxi services. That some of those Hackney carriage operators have also pushed up their fare somewhat. We are taking note of it. We are doing our work in terms of gathering the information, intelligence, and have not just sent out a press release, but have written to all the regional managers and the functional operations team to commence immediate operation to cauterize the issue.
What is supposed to take place in relation to, for example, then route taxi operators? If it is that they're traveling from Halfway Tree to Ligani or Papine, somebody asks for a turn-off and they charge for that turn-off. Can they do that?
Well, they can do that. The challenge is, and we had discussed it, Minister Monday, that the public transport operators discussed this particular matter and come up with some recommendations for him to take certain action. The challenge is that currently the matter of turn-off is unregulated. It is not a part of the regulations, and we had encouraged operators before that the turn-off is an arrangement between themselves and the passengers per se. But what we find now is that the passengers are complaining that the operators are asking for a little bit too much with the turn-off. And this is replete throughout the country. And we feel now that the time is right for the regulators to step in and create some kind of mechanism for pricing the turn-off.
Let's hear you on that, Daryl Vaz, as the Transport Minister, this matter of the unregulated turn-off situation.
Yeah, so the fact is that definitely is an area that has to be looked at and formulated in conjunction with the operators, because once you turn off, a turn-off can be a quarter mile, a half mile, a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles. And obviously, if it is that they're taking the passenger all the way to their house, then that's a completely different scenario. Or even if they're taking them to the nearest district that they can access their house, then obviously that also is an additional cost. And leaving it to the discretion of the operator, the driver at the time, obviously is not something that is fair and equitable to the passengers. So that's something that I gave instructions yesterday, that in consultation with the associations, there has to be come up with something that is agreed on, that we can move into regulation.
What did you hear from the PPV operators about this whole situation of turn-off, what they charge?
There was consensus that it is an issue, that's a problem, and that the fact of the matter is that some of the taxi drivers are abusing it, because basically they don't indicate at the beginning that there is going to be additional costs. It's at the end when the passenger has no option or no alternative. So that's also is a thing. But it was agreed that it is a problem and that there is now a situation where it's being abused.
But is it really fair, Minister Ralston Smith, to take all the discretionary power away? Because I'm looking at it from the perspective of the taxi operator as a businessman, which you look at them as that. And
Of
if
course.
it is, Minister, say for instance, you are driving, I'm in the front, there are four people in the back. I ask you for a turn off. That inconveniences the four people who need to get somewhere by a certain time. So if you factor that, so the inconvenience and the grumbling from the other passengers who must accept that I'm going to turn off, you're going to turn off to drop me at whichever point I'm going. And I think that that is what goes into what the taxi operator uses to factor how much you're going to charge for the turnoff. There's an inconvenience charge for the other passengers in the car, which there often are where the route taxes are concerned. So how do you take away that discretionary pressure ability to
I
set a
agree.
price?
I agree with that wholeheartedly, George, and that's why it is such a thorny issue in terms of how do you come up with a formula that is fair and equitable, but it cannot be left solely to the discretion of the particular driver. Obviously not. So those things will be taken into consideration. Obviously, in a situation like this, it is not clear cut. But the fact of the matter is that in the case that you just mentioned a while ago, maybe it is that depending on the distance, there should be a prescribed distance to allow for a turnoff, which would limit the inconvenience to other passengers.
And another thing to consider as well and is that you know that, well, even though the roads are being repaired right across the country even as we speak, but sometimes the main roads are in much better condition than the turn-off roads. And a taxi operator will say, listen, for what am I going to have to put my vehicle through to turn off to get you to where you go, then you have to pay a little extra than if I was turning off onto a smooth road. That's another thing in the equation, Minister.
Can't argue with that at all, and the fact of the matter is that's why we're going to make sure that stakeholder consultation, wise stakeholder consultation with not only the association, the drivers, but also the owners of the taxis that then obviously employed drivers to carry out the operations on a daily basis. But it's something that definitely is, it's not, as I said, clear cut, but it has risen again, and I think the time is now to try and come up with something, and that's what I've mandated the steering committee yesterday to do.
Hold the line, gentlemen. We have to take a break. Coming right back. Ralston Smith, coming back. The Transport Minister Daryl Vaz talking about the unregulated nature of some of the fares charged by taxi operators. Hackney Carriage operating as route taxis, overcharging passengers, route taxis overcharging charging unreasonable amounts for turn-offs. The minister said a steering committee has been tasked with coming up with a formula so that commuters can be happy and that the taxi operators can be satisfied. Minister, I want to just take you a little bit away from the issue of the fares, because yesterday we had a conversation with your good friend Edgerton Newman of Todd's, and we asked him a question and he answered us candidly. We asked him, how does he feel when he hears you announcing that the JUTC is bringing in new buses? He says he feels depressed, and he says taxi men and women across the island call him and say, boy, it's a bad day for us because more buses are coming. Your reaction to that?
So the fact of the matter is obviously a good transportation system, public transportation system, in terms of use of buses, obviously will have impact on the public passenger vehicles. Fact is, we have been low on buses, and the fact is the buses that we have had in the fleet have been an average of 12 to 15 years old, so they're unreliable. And I think what you're seeing now is with the inflow of new buses, obviously people are now willing and moving towards the public transportation systems through the JUTC. The government does have a responsibility to provide that service as an option and a good service. And I think that what we are seeing is that is starting to bear fruit. The buses are moving on time. The wait time is much less. The condition of the buses are much better, and therefore, obviously, that will thing. But it's not a matter of the taximen obviously feeling that we are cutting into their market. I think the both can coexist. You will see where there's 23 routes in the KMTR that were exclusive for the JUTC, which I've gotten the JUTC to release to the public passenger transport operators on the basis that they have been servicing those routes because of the inability for JUTC to do so. And even with the JUTC getting another 100 buses in June, which will put us at about 275 new buses in less than 2 years. I mean, that is unprecedented. Fact of the matter is that even with that, I thought it wasn't fair or equitable for these public passenger operators who have been filling that void to just take that away from them based on exclusivity of JUTC. So what you're going to see with that now is that you're going to see the normalization of those routes where, as our husband said, hackney carriage operators were operating those routes and basically being able to charge as they wish because they were unregulated.
But stick up in, Minister. But stick up in. As a businessman yourself, you know very well that the transport sector, where bus and taxis are concerned, that's not going to grow by virtue of government investment. It's going to grow by virtue of private investment. And I'm asking if you don't think that you're going to come to the point where the investment in buses will crowd out the kind of private investment that taxi operators will make and are making, and so damage or cut off their lifeline.
Not at this point, because we still are way below what we are the optimum of what we need to roll out on a daily basis. We need to roll out between 4 and 450 buses to be able to satisfy and provide a good bus service. What we are doing now is we probably have about 250 to 300, but most of them are newer buses, are new buses. So obviously the commuter who's using the JUTC is much more satisfied because of the reliability and the type of service and the quality of bus that is being used. But I don't think that until we get to that number of rollout that we will be in a position. So in essence, George, all that has happened so far is that we have changed out a fleet of old buses to new buses because we still are at pretty much the same amount of rollout, just much more efficient rollout and service that is being offered because of the newer buses not breaking down and, of course, the type of buses that we're buying in terms of the sizes, etc. So, yes, at some point, but that's not in the foreseeable.
I hear you.
That's not
an immediate concern. All right. Ralston Smith, you spoke earlier in response to a question from Tona about the enforcement measures that your agents will take where this overcharging is concerned. For the benefit of the public listening, what will that look like? What will the men and women under your charge tasked with doing on the roads where overcharging is concerned?
Well, my message to the operations team is very clear. One is to kind of operate it's on three fronts. One is a campaign to sensitize the operators of the appropriate fare structure. So the dissemination of education and information is a component of that. And two, to ensure that we collect the data from the respective areas where the offense of overcharge is taking place. And three, to effect prosecutions where necessary. Sometimes it's a matter of the operators not having a proper understanding of the arrangement, if you structure the calculation. And so I want to ensure that we educate the operators, we disseminate information to both the public and the operators, and where enforcement is required, we ensure that we treat with that. The law prescribes a fine of up to 100,000 in a parish board for that particular offense, and the authority can escalate those matters to suspending and or revocating the license. So I want to ensure that operators are fully aware of the penalties for the offenses.
And you have powers to use. All right. Minister, I was sympathetic with Edgerton Newman yesterday when I was asking him about the parking for taxi operators because he was celebrating the opening up of those 23 routes, but at the same time lamenting that they still don't have many places to park, especially in the corporate area. And I was, commiserating, empathizing. But then when I came off, I received a call from a certain player in the transport sector who said, George, you shouldn't be sympathetic to the taxi operators because in the corporate area, the ground floor of the Halfway Tree Transport Center was made available to them. They don't park there, they still park on the roads. In Christiana, I'm being told that a facility was built for them, and I hear that is goats and homeless people sleeping in there because the taxis refuse to use it, saying that if they go in there, the passengers won't come. Is this true based on your information?
That's 100% correct, and the fact of the matter is that is something that is widespread and has become almost the norm around many of the townships. But I will qualify that by saying that obviously the government has a responsibility to provide these transport centers, and they should be in a location that is convenient for the passengers to access. The problem that we have is that, for the most part, the Transport Authority does not manage the transport centers that are around the island. They are pretty much managed by the municipal corporations. And in terms of the condition of them, because of a lack of dedicated funding for the maintenance of them, they are not in the best condition. So there is blame on both sides, because I have to be totally...
yes, you have split justice. But Minister, for instance, Halfway Tree. The Halfway Tree Transport Center, based on what I know, is in good condition. So why would taxi operators not use it?
They just feel that basically the access to the transport center in terms of the distance, in terms of where they currently are, they're in a much better place for the commuters to access. But
that's one point, though, George.
Yes.
Sorry, Minister. The transport center in Halfway Tree was designed for the JUTC buses, not the taxi operators. Some years ago, the authority took the decision to have some of the Spanish Town coastal buses use the lower floor of the Halfway Tree Transportation Center. And for the most part, those buses are using the lower floor. The coastal buses going to Halfway Tree. There are some on the outside, but not for the taxis. There was never an intention, either by purpose or design, to have the taxi operators in Halfway Tree because they are hackney carriage operators, so there was no provision for parking for them. Spencer James Car Park is used for Maxfield Avenue Taxi Association. Those taxis, the route taxis operating along Maxfield Avenue to Halfway Tree operate from the Spencer James, and the taxis coming out of Papine also utilize the Spencer James. And there are plans afoot to look at other areas in and around Kingston. Papine is an area. Again, Minister asked that we put a plan together. We consult with KCMC to look at taxi parking in and around Kingston, downtown Kingston. The South Perry Car Park is an area that we are working with KCMC, and we indicated to Minister yesterday that there is a property owned by JAS, Jamaica Agricultural Society, that we'd like to have our hands on. And the Minister has again indicated that we need to put before him proper documentation for him to consult his counterpart ministers. So in respect of the taxes per se, those areas were not for them.
Oh.
So George, just to mention that yesterday at the steering committee meeting,
yes,
we discussed four or five possibilities of taxi stands in and around the corporate area. I think one was in Discovery Bay, which thankfully Noranda has donated the land right in the heart of Discovery Bay, which has been a major problem for many, many years. So we are identifying and trying to work with stakeholders and the municipal corporations. Mayor Swaby, I saw him at a function on the weekend, and he was very excited about the discussions for Papine and for downtown, and sounded like he was really ready to work with us on it. Funding is always a challenge, as I said, because Transport Authorities doesn't have a budget for it because we don't manage many of them. But that is something that I have said before when I became minister, that has to have a very, very serious conversation in relation to the management of the existing and the expansion to make sure that we give the taxi operators proper facilities for the commuters to be able to access in a safe and efficient way. And that is a big problem now, that we don't have enough, and therefore it is causing the taxi operators to be in breach of the law because of the fact that we, governments, present and past, have not been able to provide proper transport centers in the various townships.
Hear you. Gentlemen, thank you this morning. Ralston Smith, Daryl Vaz, all the best.
Thank you very much.